big part of the world is boring, not just direction, right? If everybody is happy, probably you're not being bold enough. Probably there's
Just reach for the stars and just go for it. Again, like I don't
even increased my income by almost 10 times in a 18 months period, which like from a normal standpoint, people
just be like, stop being boring. And as a big, bold word behind me, stop being boring. And I just encourage do something bold, get out your comfort zone, right?
we connected a few weeks back, and I think what struck me was it is everywhere on your LinkedIn and everywhere, right above ordinary. And then we spoke about not being boring and how a big part of the world is boring, not just related to business or life or marketing, what you do, and leadership, what I do, but just if we look back, it's all the same. It's all right. So just like for the whoever might listen to this, can you very briefly introduce yourself and share like where did you learn to not be boring and not be the same, not be the safe, right? What was that trigger? What was that point in moment in history for you?
Okay, that's a good question. Where did I learn not to be boring? That's fun. That's fun. Yeah, it's a bit of an intro. Really crazy, creative work and stuff that really just sticks in people's minds and helps them to stand out. Because I think, as you highlighted, nowadays there's a lot of the same, and there's a lot of safe and wanting to go with things that are just quite safe and secure. And from my angle, I think it's a really big thing in the sort of brand world that there was a sort of element of time about a few years ago where a lot of businesses in particular were going for more of a minimalism kind of route. Everyone was going for stripping back the logos and identities to go for something a little bit safer. And for me, I was just going, why? Are we just trying to do this to bring our logo down, bring our creative down to a point that's just a little bit more safe because we want to appeal to everyone? But then by appealing to everyone, you appeal to no one. So by being safe and secure and things like that, you don't really connect with people in the same way. It comes across a little bit cold, I think, sometimes in the same way. And it was around that time that I really wanted to push to the other sort of direction, really. I wanted to, where things go zig, I wanted to zag, and I wanted to do something that's bold and stand out because that's what's memorable. We do a lot of brand experiences at Anti-Gravity, and I was listening to a talk recently from someone who said, you'll see 1,000 social posts a day, but if you go to an in-person event where something crazy happened, you'll always remember it for years to come. And it's about making things that are memorable that really stuck to me. And I've been saying you're not that memorable. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love it. You talk about memorable, right? Because when we look back at our lives, the things that we remember or our memories are built off, right? Either we did something new, unique, or somebody else did something unique, right? Take us back, right? Take us back in your life, right? What are some of those memories that you remember that maybe you are proud of, or maybe not so proud of, that you did something different, right? Which built this streak of like being not boring or rising above ordinary.
I think ultimately when I was, is again a good question. I think ultimately when I was like early in my career, I'm quite like a loud, boisterous sort of thing. And back before I started my business, I used to go to a lot of events, stuff like that. And I realized that that element of me of being quite loud and flamboyant, like maybe a flamboyant, but someone when I used to be the doorman at a lot of events, right? And when people would walk through, I'd give them, if I knew them, I'd give them a big hug, like, hey, and I'd give them a really big welcome. And it's funny because you do those little things that make you memorable. And then the time that you're not there, people go, where were you? I was expecting the big hug and the big hurrah. And that was like a really early memory for me of going, oh, actually being a bit more extrovert and stuff like that, allowing yourself to stand out is really good in terms of being memorable. And can I carry that forward into my work and what I do in a career sense, in a business sense? And one of the things I did, you said, give an example of doing something different. That was quite a funny one. Is a couple of years back when we were first starting out, I actually went to the businesses on Valentine's Day. I got up at 5 a.m. and I went to all the businesses that I really wanted to work with in Manchester. This is when I was like a freelancer. I found the contact details just on LinkedIn, like naturally. It's a bit any of the AI sort of scraping tools and stuff like that. I found them naturally, and I created a Valentine's Day gift set, which said, I want to be your Valentine's Day, work with me, that kind of, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was a smarter wording like that. It was like swipe right on me or something like that. And I built this like Valentine's Day cards, did loads of like little merchy bits. And I literally went and hand delivered them throughout Manchester to all the sort of marketing managers and things like that. It was a funny situation in the sense that it stuck with me. It did very well on LinkedIn, and I posted about it. But you don't see is that I had to essentially break into some, well, not break it, but I had to get around security by saying, hi, I'm not some sort of creepy stalker, but I've got a Valentine's thing, like it kind of deliberate. And some of the security guards would be like, have you got one for me as well? I was like, no, no, I'm so sorry. But I think, and if I'm honest, that it didn't really work.
Mm.
I tried to do something different. It didn't quite work. But what it did do is did really well on LinkedIn and connected with a different audience. And I did ultimately get work off it. So I think really being different and standing out in whatever way you can nowadays is more important than ever.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful example, right? That takes courage and obviously investment of time and effort to do something like that. And I'm sure you must have faced all kind of reactions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, you can do that, or why? Who the hell are you? Get out! You must have seen all kind of reactions. And I think you said something wonderful, right? That it didn't work, and I would say that the question that wanting it to work is, I would say, already like going against wanting it to work makes you boring, right? Wanting it to work makes you the same. I remember most of when I was younger, most of my life was boring or the same. And I was trying to make things work, or I was trying to figure out the rules and then live
Yeah.
by the rules. There was this rebellious streak in me. So every few months, I would do, even as a child, I would do something. So in a normal, so much in, when I'm normally living my life, I would live in a way that if I'm in a classroom, even my classmates would not notice me. I will not raise my hand. I will not ask a difficult question. I will never be in the front of the class, right? I will never take the limelight. But then every few months, I would do something that the whole school notices it. Like, who
Really?
is that guy? And that desire to be something new or extraordinary or something different was all through that period, right? When I was quiet, even then the desire was there, but then it requires a level of courage to raise your hand, to sit on the first row, to ask
Yeah.
a provocative question. And then it would come out after every 2, 3 months, like it would burst open. And then some of those things are things which I'm not proud of. Oh, like I hacked my computer using the computers, and this was 99 or 2000. So there was almost no security system. So I had my hacked the whole like for the main finals exams, and nobody like knew that it was in open, right?
Yeah.
And I just guessed to the password of one of the teachers, and the password was the wife's name of the guy. And then I distribute, and I because I didn't really wanted that for me, and I distributed it across. Now suddenly everybody knows me, right?
Yeah.
But who, if you ask anybody who am I, like Sumit is a quiet guy. Sumit doesn't speak. He would never do something like this. So every 2, 3 months, I would do something crazy. And that was me testing the limits of what is possible.
Do you not think it's funny, isn't it? You know how I just talked there about I would go to events and give people a big hug and a big hello. And if
Hmm.
I wasn't there, people would kind of go, where were you? Where were you? This is because I suppose there's something in disrupting a pattern there, isn't there? So for you, for example, as a kid, because you were the typical, as you say, you were quiet and stuff, do you think there was something in the fact that you were seen in one light and the second you did something that sort of sagged against what people expect from you, it made you really stand out? Do you think there was something in that?
So for me, I think when I was a child, it was mostly out of frustration of not being happy with myself
Okay.
because I had ideas, but I would not speak up. I had questions, but I would not ask. And then it would come out in something really crazy,
Yeah.
right? And it could be both, right? Creative in a good way and creative in a destructive way. It could be both. But I think what makes it hard for anybody to be bold or just be themselves and not wanting it to work, not wanting it to fit in. But if I
Yeah.
have an idea, I think that is enough, right? If I have a question, that is enough for me to put it forward rather than, okay, am I recording this? How will it look? What will somebody think? Right? What does it say about my expertise, of my credibility? If I know of all of this, it creates authenticity. And many times, authenticity is not boring, right? When
Yeah.
people are just being themselves, everybody is unique in some way. And if we let that out, that is not boring. And I think for me, and for maybe for most humans, it's that fear of being judged or fear of being looked in a certain way that stopped me simply being who I wanted to be.
Do you think there's an element of like when we get to a certain age as well, we stop caring as much about what other people think and actually see the things, like you say, you see the sort of things that make you different as something that makes you unique and therefore a little bit more special. What would you say if someone was, say, listening to this who is feeling a bit quiet, might have some hobbies that they're not quite so proud of, for example, and feel like they might get judged for them? As someone who, like you say, when you were younger, who was a bit more quiet, have you got any advice for them, you think? How would you help? Because obviously now you run your own podcast and stuff, you're very open and talking to
Yeah.
anyone how to get out of that kind of bro.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a human being who is not afraid of being judged. I
Yeah,
don't think there's a human being who doesn't want to be liked or accepted in a group.
yeah,
And yet there are levels of progression, right? Yes, I am more open talking about things than I would never speak about earlier. But even for me, there are elements where I can stand out and which I don't do it because then there is another level of fear, right? So I would say it's a progression layer which never ends. So even when you grow, I've spoken to former athletes who are playing a huge role in the society after their retirement. I have spoken to businessmen who everybody thinks they are extraordinary, they are great. And internally for them, they know that they are not playing at the highest level. So what I have seen is this never ends, right? Everybody has a next level or something to say and something to speak, and then a reason and the reason might many times be subconscious. Right? It doesn't have to be well articulated because that's the nature of our emotions, right? It's not well articulated, but almost everybody has a level of expression which they are
yeah,
holding back from the world. And it is not just bold, right? Bold does not just mean creative or business. Bold could also mean like simply saying, I love you to my wife, right? Bold could
yeah,
also mean saying, I'm sorry. That's not easy, right? Especially for leaders. Boldness is not just like more dream, more profit. Boldness can also be apologizing. Boldness can also be showing that you care, you love, and expressing those in words.
yeah. I agree. I agree. I think people think you just spot on. Actually, right? People think that boldness has to be this extravagant, crazy thing. You can be bold in a more simple way and still have a big impact. And I think that's the sort of key thing, really, is to make sure, like I say, just be bold with your actions as well as your words. I guess I'd say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I will ask you, right? Because this looks good in theory, right? It is actually scarier and riskier in practice. And there are real risks, right? If you are totally open and bold, there could be risks. So in your life, when you have been bold, either for yourself or one of your clients, what has that cost you?
it's cost me being bold. If I'm honest, being bold has actually, because this is a thing. I think I'm not bold. I've never been bold in the sense of being reckless. And I
Hmm.
think if you can be bold and be reckless, you can do something that's so off the cuff and so crazy that it can alienate people and make you a bit of an enemy. Not to bring this back to branding, but just as an example of this in a brand sense, you can look at Jaguar when they rebranded. They did something so different, so off the cuff that people were like, "Oh God," not really vibing with it. In terms of me as an action, I'm always quite conscious to keep bold in a non-reckless way where I can be. So I've not really had an instance where so maybe sounds cocky to say where it's gone wrong. I think what I've done is I've been quite a yes man. That's been something that I found being quite powerful. When I first started at 24, putting myself out there a little bit more, going to events where I didn't know anyone and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm like, you've got the extra bit element where I'm quite open, quite happy to talk to anyone. But at 24, it was still quite daunting to me. But I kept thinking to myself, what's the worst that can happen? So I put myself into these situations, pushed myself out of my comfort zone. And then I found that my comfort zone was just getting wider and wider to the point that now, and I don't say this in whatever way, I can quite easily happily go on a stage in front of 500, 600 people and not feel any sort of anxiety or worry because I keep going, what's the worst that can happen? And I think there's an element of like when it comes to being like bold in your actions, opening yourself up and allowing yourself to experience things that scare you a little bit, but don't, that aren't reckless is a really good way to grow. And I've found for me in my life, being able to put energy into those actions and push the boundaries of boldness, I suppose, without ever being reckless has been really beneficial for me personally and business wise. Personally, if I never went out to these events and met people and never started going to these events on my own. Because I didn't have anyone to go with, I just thought I need to get to these events, I need to meet people, I need to go push myself out of the comfort zone. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have met someone who then introduced me to my now wife. So
Hmm.
I always think it's what's the worst that can happen, but also what's the best thing that can happen. I'd have never predicted if I go to these events, I'm going to meet my one day wife. That's crazy. But I think that goes to show just by being able to put yourself out your comfort zone and be bold in your action, there's a lot of good things that can come from it.
Yeah, and I think you asked two good questions there. What is the best that could happen? What is the worst that could happen? And one of the things which I have seen from people who rise above this boring or
Yeah,
ordinary is they think of the question that what is the best that could happen, and
yeah,
almost ignore the question what is the best worst that can happen. All right. Is there an example from your life where you aimed for something like you wouldn't give yourself a chance for, but you aimed for it and you got something out of it?
yeah. That's a good question. Let me think here. So I got a opportunity to work with an enormous agency. They got in touch. They said, "We want you to do, we want you to just have a bit of an informal chat." And I thought, okay. And to be fair, this is something else that I would say that I encourage people to do, and I always do myself. Is like I will always go above and beyond in everything I do because I think again, like that is the best thing that can happen. I never want to be able to. I never want to be the person that's thought, "Oh, I could have done more on this." So there was an opportunity that was brought to me. Someone messaged me on LinkedIn, agency, and said, "Oh my god, really like your work. Would really like to work with you." So I just thought I'm going to give it everything. I'm going to spend a few days. I'm going to just absolutely do this crazy presentation with lots of animations, crazy stuff going on, and do something really bold and be bold with my action. And that way I can leave that meeting going, this is the best thing I can do. And I, considering it was a business thing, I wanted to bring a lot of my personality to it. So I had a slide that had my interests. I had running. I'm from Wigan originally, and Wigan is well known for pies. So I had a pie on there. And then I had a sausage on there because I once won a sausage competition, right? And that was something I put in sausage competition, like making sausages. But it's just a funny thing to put on there. And that was probably, that could have gone one of two ways, right? But I think it was really important to share my personality if I was going to work with these people. And ultimately, that paid off in droves. I got growing recommendations from them, and I ended up working with them 2.5 years, and I still work with the person who found me on LinkedIn even today. And this is 5, 6 years later. So I think, in answer to your question, it's always better to just reach for the stars and just go for it. Again, like I know we said, what's the worst thing? I mean, but again, what's the best thing happened? That was the best thing happened.
Exactly. I remember I was working with a lot of people in middle management when I quit my IT career and started to work with leaders. And even though I had been an entrepreneur, I have been a founder earlier, I had started a nonprofit also. When I quit, I was in middle management, right? So the normal, ordinary, nobody will question thing is, okay, I was doing this. Now let me find my peers. Let me
Yeah,
help them get better, right? But I always had this dream, right? I wanted to work with entrepreneurs. I wanted to work with the CEOs. And what happened was like the normal trajectory is you climb the ladder of, let's say, management. And once you have coached a few people here, then you take on to the next bigger level. And slowly, maybe 5 years, I would be coaching CEOs. And
yeah,
one day I had this dream or this desire, like deep desire. I want to work with like only business owners, only founders, only CEOs. And the thing that I did, I just opened up my LinkedIn and I just changed the tagline. I simply said I coach CEOs. That's it. Right? There was not even thinking, let alone deliberation or business planning. I did not even think. It just came because that is what I wanted to do, and I had no CEO client at that point of time. And then when I would meet somebody, people would already have read my profile,
oh, right.
and I would speak up. Right? I would say I coach CEOs, I coach business owners. I would start saying that, and eventually, what happened is I got a referral of a CEO just
Wow.
because somebody had heard me. And then, yes, obviously, there were many people who said no to my offer when I reached out to a CEO, but I got a CEO. I did not have to do anything. Somebody came to me because I said it to somebody and I had basically put it like a broadcast message. And that relationship led to where I am today, where I'm only working with business owners, only working with CEOs and then their teams. But I'm only working with that. And that probably shortcutted like my path,
Yeah,
even increased my income by almost 10 times in a 18 months period, which like from a normal standpoint, people would not even, and this is what I see with when I work with people as well, right? That people would not even talk about the extraordinary. People do not even give themselves a permission to dream for something huge, because in their mind, they have already made up that this is not possible, or this is beyond the reasonable standards of growth or progress.
But look at how like good it was from you just being a bit bold and going,
Yeah.
I'll change that and see what happens. And that opened so many doors for you. You've obviously spoken to loads of different business leaders and CEOs and stuff. We're talking about that push against being ordinary and boring and things like that. Have you got any good examples from some of the leaders and stuff you've talked to that they've done something in their organization that's quite unique or different that maybe allows what makes people want to kind of come to them a little bit more?
Absolutely. I'll give you two examples, right? One is a very tactical, short-term thing. One of the companies that I'm working with is totally revamping how they do something, right? It's a physical thing. So they need machines for their products to go out,
Yeah.
and they're totally revamping it, and they wanted a new machine, right? And they wanted not just one, but if one worked, then they would basically place an order of many of these machines. And these machines are like five to $15,000 per machine, right? So this is
Wow.
expensive. And
Yeah.
they reached out to somebody, and they found out, get a quote on the machine, right? How long will it take to get the machine? They get the response 1 month, right? You'll have to ship it. And this guy wants to move fast, right? And he said, how can we have it in 7 days? And the other guy says, there's no way possible. And now most people would say, yes, there is shipping, there is logistics, there is billing, there is supply chain. Like, this is how it
And,
works. It can't go faster than this. And this guy said, this is not acceptable. If I get slowed down here, then my dream, it's gone, right? It's just delayed. So he said, this is a huge order coming towards you. If this works out, I don't know what you have to do. Figure it out, right? If you have to fly with the machine, if you have to rent a vehicle just with the machine and the whole vehicle is empty, if you have to
yeah.
do whatever, right? I want this machine in 7 days in my premises. And he would not accept no. He would just keep on making requests. And in the end, what happened was, other person said, since you are so consistent, I can think of a way, I can send it over. It will cost you some extra. And he said yes to that. That I want it now. And if it works, I'll give you order of another 10, 20, 30. But same distance, same industry, same frameworks, everything is the same, right? People are the same. But they managed a way around to get something delivered in 7 days, where
Yeah. Yeah.
typically everybody would accept 30 days. So this is like a very short-term tactical example.
Cool.
A big example on a bigger leadership level is, I'm working with a former athlete who is transforming the game of volleyball in the country. And he's meeting people. He's talking about initiatives, building a facility, building something for coaches, something for athletes. And he got invited with a proposal, right? That somebody can do something. And this somebody is a big industrialist with huge amounts of money. And they have proposed an idea to get engaged in his initiative,
Yeah.
and instead of saying yes or no, he said, this is too ordinary for you. At your level, why don't you do something with the whole world watches, right? Why don't you just, instead of becoming a part of my initiative, why
Yeah.
don't you put your money, why don't you put your name behind something and create a training school, which like everybody in the country comes to, right? And he doesn't know this guy. So there is no relationship, right? This is,
Yeah.
both are established in their own industries, but it's a stranger relationship. And he just inspires this person for a bigger vision. And this guy basically said, you are right. They have still not agreed upon something, but they are certainly beyond the small tie-up, which would have been very easy, right? It's, I am doing this and you are telling me I can contribute in this way. The easiest thing is to say yes to that. The difficult thing or the not boring thing is to say, why don't you do that? And which works for both of us, right? So these would be two examples. And again, the question is again, what if it works, right? That is the question. The, Obviously, if you start from wanting it to work, then anyways, you're on the back foot, because the chances
Yeah.
of it working is less because it is out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
But what
And
if
also-
it works? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also think there's an element of the gentleman you're speaking about there who, I presume then he's gone off and done this school, right? He's gone and built this school up. Is that what he's doing now?
Yes, he's almost leading a grassroots, yeah.
Hey.
In fact, he is currently, or I think he's going to fly very soon. So he's in India, but he is going to be flying to Birmingham, I think
Right.
in another 2 weeks, to receive an award by the International Olympic Committee. And he is receiving a global award for building a grassroots league of sports in India in this case.
Oh, what a guy. That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's phenomenal. And I think it's one of those things about not, he's not even hesitate on it either. He just went, right, yeah, great idea. I agreed on with it. I think there's probably not many founders you found that aren't quite quick at these things as well. There's a lot of people, I think you probably have people come to you all the time with like big ideas of things they want to do, or, oh, I've got this business idea, or, oh, I want to do this in my company. And they'll talk a big talk, but they won't actually implement, and they slow down, and that sort of slowness eventually wears out the idea, or they miss the boat on it. And I think what's so cool about the sort of the gentleman talk about then, that you probably found in a lot of business owners and founders, is that the ability to take bold action, but like just click on it and be hot on the heel and not hesitate and just crack on, because that the ability of not hesitating as well is also something that's quite bold in an action. Just taking the dive and just going for it with your business idea.
yeah. And I think what I've discovered is it goes beyond the action. It goes like deeper into who we think we are, right? If we think we are something bigger, the action becomes easier, right? So if I think I'm a former athlete, that is, I would say that's almost like a self-defeating statement because I'm
Yeah.
using former,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that will not allow me to do something today powerfully. But if I say I'm building a grassroots movement around volleyball or anything, then I give myself the permission to ask to make an initiative from that, like I'm doing something. But if I put myself, I'm a former engineer, I used to do this. And many times what I see is there is always like a next level of growth, which is already there in our dreams, but we have
Yeah.
not fully stepped into it, which is why we can see the bold action, we can envision it, but we don't take action on the same.
I think it's interesting. There's also a fine line, because you can also get people who go the other way, who you get this a lot in the design industry. A lot of designers who are quite like junior will put down that they're like a creative director, and it's, I don't really quite hard it. But then I think you can see the sort of the distinction there. I think is how, again, but then that's like what you say, isn't it? Like how to be bold, but in the right ways,
Yeah,
without
yeah,
being reckless with it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just not hesitating, just going for stuff.
yeah, yeah. See, you are a business owner yourself, right? You're starting something new, you're making something go from zero to something big, right? What is one or maybe a few of the bold moves that maybe you are hesitating upon, right? That can actually, let's say, whatever you think that you want to get to in 3 years, right? What could be a way to get there in one, right? What could be some bold moves like that?
That's a good question. I'm quite itchy, which is a weird thing to say. But I think in the sense that I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of, like, currently alongside anti-gravity, I'm also working on another business with two other founders at the moment, pushing that forward. But I've also got other ideas for businesses. And I think in terms of the things that I want to do for anti-gravity too, and in terms of what am I hesitating on at the moment, I'm hesitating to pull the trigger on kind of getting some live events in place with some of our clients and partners, because there's a lot of setup for that. And I'm hesitating because of the setup for that. I've done a lot of work in the studio at the moment. But really, I should just spend the time doing it. And I have started to really maximize, I think, my time as well. I've started to block out time for deep work and for how I organize my week. I think I'm 6 months in at the moment, and historically I'm used to just hitting the day running and just running it through, and call overruns, that's fine, stuff like that. Whereas now I've become really rigid with my timetable. So actually, in answer to my hesitation, I just need to sit down, book in time with myself, actually just get it implemented. But it's all learning. I'm still quite new to this, but I already in the past 6 months, I've learned so much about leadership and business, and I continue to really. But yeah, the me now from 6 months ago is night and day different.
Yeah, yeah. But then that would make it almost an opportune time to do something bold, right?
Exactly,
Or to
right?
do something which is not ordinary.
Exactly.
Right. One of the questions that I like to ask myself often, because there is this tendency, which is almost a psychological thing, that we tend to fill up the time that we have with something to do.
Yeah.
And the same thing, probably we can do it in 2 hours, but if are given 4 hours, we would find a good reason to make it stretch to 4 hours, right? So a question which I ask often myself, that if I have to only work half the time that I'm working today, right? If I have to only work 3 or 4 hours a day, and I increase my vision to double, right? So if I have a goal of reaching 10 million, let's make it 20 million, right? But I reduce my time involvements, right? So my time goes half, my target, my goal goes double. Then
Yeah,
what
yeah.
could be some bold moves that I can actually achieve the double the target in half the time? How would you think about that question if you were just to ask yourself?
That's a good question. I think in terms of how I do that, I just implement like more times around the evening, so ensuring that I achieve what I need to achieve during the day. I don't think you've heard about this, that I've started to really implement that's been really beneficial as a founder. Is if you end up getting cobbled in lots of jobs, right? Lots of different bits and bobs of the business you need to pick up. As I think no one ever tells you when you start a business how many hats you actually have to wear. You just think, I'm just running a business, but actually you've got so much to do with HR, that your payroll, things like that. There's so many hats. And I think one thing that I learned, which has really helped me part compensa- oh, what's the word? Part compartmentalize some of the work and the tasks I do. There's actually something Steve Jobs used to do called signal noise. I don't know if you've heard of this. You have the signal noise?
Yes, yes, I have heard of
Yes,
it.
it's, signal noise is something that I found really beneficial. So you put three things that you signal that you have to get done today, and then the rest is noise. And then what I'm doing at the moment is I built up a full Excel timetable, hour by hour of my time. And so I am now like rigid on that. It doesn't move. I have things like I lock in the afternoon. And it's also like you've got to be receptive to what works best for you. I'm very energetic. So in the mornings and when I'm in my best place to have chats, stuff like that, I want to make sure I've got deep work time in the afternoon. I also get to work quite early. So I normally am at my desk by 7. But so really the best time for me to complete the achievement that I want in terms of starting to set up events is actually in the evening. So after this call, I'll be going and implementing that and making sure that I stick with that. Because as you say, something that's in the back of my mind, but talking to you now, I got to follow my own advice and not hesitate and just crack on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's Steve Jobs also said that innovation is saying no to a thousand things, right? Not
Yeah.
just doing. And I think that's that signal versus noise, right? And that we don't need time, right? Any leader who thinks that they need more time or more resources to achieve, right, their big goals is working backwards, right? Is stuck in that world of, right? It's all the same. But if you can really separate that signal from the noise, then you don't need more time. Yes, you would need more courage. You would need more
Mhm.
openness to go out there and do something and then keep on doing, like in the face of whatever somebody thinks about you or says to you. But it does not take more time to focus on the signal and taking action on the signal, right? Yes, it takes more of you, but it does not take more time.
No, by doing that as well, you open yourself. I think you look at your sort of like calendar like this as well, where you see every hour as a block of time to do what you just deem as essential. But if the task needs more time, then you've got to be able to manage your signal noise to allow that more time. Don't feel like, because there's also, and I did this originally where I had my 3 signals and I was actually giving those signals. They were quite big jobs, really. And it was a bit unrealistic to think it was doable within a day, for example. A brand identity for a client, that's just not doable. In a day, I'd be like, I get in, and I can do this, and I do that. But actually, what you need to do is go, okay, how much noise is there this week? What are the essential things? And almost looking at it as a week thing as well as like a daily thing. But that has been a game changer for me, really. And just in terms of my leadership and also, I think because and I think this is probably the same for a lot of players. I'm dyslexic,
Mm.
absolute mess. When it comes to reading and writing, really struggle to read. So one thing that because I've really wanted to bolster my business capabilities and things. So I've been listening to a lot of business audiobooks because everything's an audiobook now, which is great. I've got a stack of books at home like,
Yeah.
that I would try and bring on holiday, business books to read, and I'd get through about 3 pages of one because I find it physically quite hard. So that's another thing is trying to find, if you want to upskill and benefit yourself, try and find things that work for you. Because again, you'll hear loads of CEOs talk about reading being so important. I know that too, but I struggle to read. So what's another workaround that makes that doable for
Yeah.
you, what you want to achieve? I think I've always been quite optimistic in like when someone puts a blocker in place or something comes, oh, we can't do
Yeah.
it.
No, I think it's a good example of like when you say I am dyslexic, right? Everybody is unique in some way,
Yeah.
whether it is like something like that or anything else, right? ADHD or whatever, right? Different ways. We are all unique in some way. And the general advice, the general tendency is to balance it with life or to temper around it, right? To figure it, to not too sharp, but to not have those sharp edges, right?
Yeah.
What I normally end up telling people today is to go all in, right? So there
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
things because of being dyslexic that you can do, you can understand that others can't. So instead of trying to figure it out or trying to work around it, go all in to the point that the world is not ready to accept. And that's probably the easiest way for you to succeed. And I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. I know a guy who is by nature a performer, right? He's a musician. He goes on stages. He loves it, right? He loves being in public, on stages. And he runs a business of restaurants, right? Which is very different, right? It's very
Yeah.
labor intensive, very physical, and you are in one premises at a time. And he was at a crossroads, right? That business, and I want to really do this, right? And I think my suggestion was simply leaning instead of saying, okay, how do I balance these two? How do
Yeah.
I manage this big dream or ambition, desire to sing, to do something with my business and keep it separate? Like, how about you lean into all of that? And what he ended up doing was he basically expanded his business and shared the whole thing on YouTube and social media live as he was doing that. And that created a huge amount of social media gathering and following just because of he was very good at being on a stage. So he's very
Yeah.
authentic. His language, his delivery is wonderful. And today, as a result of that, he has waiting lists on his restaurants. The people are queuing up to eat at his restaurants. He has opened up another chain. He's not doing any marketing. He's not even doing deliveries. It's all dine in, right? He's so
Wow.
busy that he's not even going to Uber Eats and all of these. He doesn't need them, right? He's so busy. There's endless demand, and all or most of the demand is getting from people have already seen him, his
Yeah.
reel, his video, or something. And for him, this is better than imagined.
Wow. I was going to say the thing that feels like a shame. He wanted to be a musician. Or I really thought you were going to say there that he was going to perform at some of his restaurants because surely that makes sense to him to do, right? Could he not perform at some of his restaurants, do nights?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, how would you merge it? The question is, how would you merge it, right?
Yeah, I love what you're saying about doubling down, but I felt like he really could have just also just brought both together. They feel like they're a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got any examples of from any of the sort of business leaders and stuff you found that like the one you just said there with regards to leaning in on something and maybe something because I think a lot of people like we were talking about at the start of this conversation see like I always so for me, for example, I actually lost one of my creative jobs through being dyslexic and not actually owning it and just saying, sorry, my spelling's so bad. It's actually just really bad at spelling. And this, I never owned that. And I lost some weight from that. And I felt really bad about it for ages. And now I'm quite open with it. And like you say, now it's become a bit of a power and something that I'm quite proud of. And also something that I can see as a benefit because it allows me to think a little bit differently. But have you got any other examples of any like leaders stuff you have had some sort of difficulty and then maybe turn it into a bit of a strength in some capacity?
I would say whatever makes you unique is a strength,
Yeah.
and it will lead to difficulties.
Yes.
And so one of my coaches told me, I can't forget that one statement. He said, "You will either be judged or you will be ignored."
Okay. That's
All
good.
right. So
You could say.
yeah. So I think yes, it will be difficult. Yes, it will invite judgment. But then that's the path, right? That's not bad or wrong, but we end up thinking that. But whatever makes us unique, I would still say that failing at that is better than succeeding at being the ordinary or doing what everybody is doing or doing what is accepted, right? If you
Yeah.
have an idea and it's not an idea which is coming out of fear or anger, it's a gut feeling, right? I want to do something. I want to sing something. I want to express something. I want to shout. I want to say sorry. I want whatever is coming up, right? If you have something which you can feel in your bones, then there is nothing else required, right? Then you have all the permission to say that. And that might be your biggest advantage,
Yeah.
perspective of what people say. And people will say, not because of the thing in you, but people will say something because they can't digest it, right? Because it does not fall under their mental models, but it has nothing to do with you, right? Even if I say, I don't like white shirt, right? We're talking about not boring. Why are you wearing a white shirt, right? So that's about me. That's not about you.
No,
But when I share a feedback to a business owner, right? or when a business owner gets feedback because their idea is so out there, it is that somebody is sharing their definition of boring with you that has nothing to do with you. Even though you might feel hurt in the short term, it is more about them. And I would say that's a sign that you're moving in the right direction, right? If everybody is happy, probably you're not being bold enough. Probably there's another level.
I think it's like it ties into a bit of personal brand is something that's thrown around everywhere. And I think it's very hard to find what that is sometimes. But I think people forget that the word brand as well, kind of when I say personal brand, I don't mean the sense of LinkedIn. I mean the sense of the things that people expect from you and doing the things, like I say, we said at the start, me being a big bear hugger. And what can you do as a person to stand out and help yourself differentiate yourself in the crowd? Because that is what's going to help you level up personally. As much as I talk about it for brands, it is something personally you can do. It's really funny you mentioned my white shirt because I'm not just saying this. I've often been thinking recently, our brand color at Anti-Gravity is orange. And I've been thinking that I should probably start coming on to calling podcasts in some sort of orange shirt. So I'm more branded myself. So I preach what I live, what I preach, right? And if you look at some of the business leaders out there, when you think of Steve Jobs, what was he always wearing? It was, oh, you always think of him in the black turtleneck, right? That's his part of his brand, right? And even Stephen Bartlett, he's always in the black t-shirt. And do you know what I mean? And you get that association with people, and that can become part of the brand, but it's also something that makes them different. You think a black shirt wouldn't be so different, but because he's worn it enough, put himself on a stage and
Yeah.
other things that put him out there, that repetition of the image, of his brand image, of his image, is then what sticks in people's minds. There's a good friend of mine who's an illustrator here in Manchester, and I'm sure he'd admit this. He wears these really thick, big glasses, right? And more recently, when I've seen him, I can spot him across a room.
Mm.
And I'll go, oh, that's John. And see the big glasses. And that's become part of his brand identity and association. And I think, like you say, you can do that through your actions or even, like you say, and how you word, look at it and act as well.
Yeah. See, we can continue talking about this forever, right? But
Really.
let's end with one prompt, one last prompt, right? You are in Manchester, right? If you are addressing, let's say, a group of business owners in Manchester or even in England, right? And if you have no fear, if you have no concern, what is it that you would say to them, right? Which maybe feels a bit edgy, right? What would you say?
If I was in front of loads of business owners right now,
Yes, if you have a stage, if you have a platform, and you don't worry about how it will land or anything, what would you say to these people, which might be a bit edgy for you?
I don't think it would be edgy for me, but I think it would be
Mm.
edgy from them. I would love to just get on a big stage and have the words "stop being boring" behind me, because I think a lot of people are being boring. If I'm totally honest, people are following trends, people are following algorithms, businesses are following trends, businesses are following algorithms, leaders are to a degree as well. There's an element of everyone's been tries to do what's been working for all the time without really questioning why they're doing it. And I really would get on stage and just encourage people to think a little bit more outside the box. And it's easy to say be different. Everyone says be different. Oh, you should be different. But actually, I'm not encouraging different. I'm just encouraging don't be the same as everyone else, because there's so much the same. And I would love to get up there and just be like, stop being boring. And as a big, bold word behind me, stop being boring. And I just encourage people to just think outside the box and just, like what we talked about, start being bold with your actions, not reckless. You don't have to do it. I'm not saying go and rob a bank or do anything crazy. I'm just saying do something bold, get out your comfort zone, right? It will not only push your business forward, it will push you personally forward. If you're bold with your action and not reckless.
Yes. To sum it up to our conversation, right? I would just answer the same question myself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm working with many business owners, and one of the things they don't like is the younger generation, right? So if I'm speaking to a bunch of business owners, I would say go hire a 20-year-old or listen
Yes.
to a 20-year-old in your business, in your teams, and ask them for ideas. If I am the CEO, what would you do? If you are the CEO, if the 20-year-old is a CEO, you have the responsibility of the entire business. And I'm sure you will get ideas which you will hit. And my
Yes.
message would be to these business owners to actually, as you said, actually execute it. You can still change the idea, you can still work on that, But I think everything that you hate, everything that you don't like, especially from the younger generation today, there is some genius in it, which if you can accept, it will not just help you in your business. That's secondary. I think more importantly, business plays a very important role in society. It will make the whole ecosystem that you touch operate better, and more than better, I think richer, right? It will bring almost a new flavor, even if it creates a controversy in the short term or something like that. But I would say, go and talk to a 20-year-old, and whatever they say, blindfolded, implement it, make it your own, but go out and do something about it.
100%. I'd actually take it a step further, if I'm honest. I'd encourage people to mentor more, not in the sense of actually spending hours and hours, but when I started doing what I'm doing now, I had a fantastic mentor who taught me so much. He's 10 years senior in what I am, but he's what I aspire to be in 10 years, right? And we've helped each other out over the years. I've given him some feedback and advice. He's given me some feedback and advice.
Yeah.
That 10-year kind of gap between us has allowed so much knowledge to be passed down. And it's like you say, having that is just phenomenal. Also, I actually recently, to the 20-year-olds who might be watching this, don't be afraid to reach out to some business owners and ask for a 15-minute chat. Go in, not asking for, I don't want to get a job with you. I don't think it's not that. It's just, I'd really like some advice and to hear things. And then you never know what you might learn as well. I recently had another guy I was speaking to on LinkedIn who we reached out to each other. We built an amazing business and sold it on. And I've been learning a lot from him from the sort of business mentorship side of things. But also he's been learning stuff from me. And we just go for a coffee and just have a chat. And that's it. It's just the passing of knowledge. And I think, like you say, it's about breaking down those barriers and just feeling comfortable, just trying to share knowledge between generations, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And again, any barrier is only imaginary, right? That reminds me, it's a hot day here, and I was playing with my son with a water pistol yesterday, and I said no using it inside the house, right? And 5 minutes later, he's doing it inside the house, right? So it's nothing bad happens, right? It's maybe the wall is wet a little bit, maybe I'm angry a little bit, but for him, that boundary or that line is very imaginary, and he's willing to test it. And many times, I think we forget to test the limits of the rules that sometimes we have. So this was a wonderful conversation, Jordan, right? Anything you would like to add before we close this?
I think other than just what I've discussed here about just trying to be bold and just get out of your comfort zone, I think I'd really like to just finish on anyone who's listening to this who's maybe a little bit quiet, like we said at the start of this conversation. Don't be afraid to speak out and show your differences, because also the people are the quietest, as you probably know from the mass amount of like CEOs you've talked to. So a lot of the quiet ones are normally the geniuses, and you've got a lot of good things to say. So don't feel like you should get out there and to share your ideas with the world. But no, honestly, it's been an absolutely wonderful chat with you today.
Absolutely. As you said, right? Get out there and share your ideas, and I think have fun.
Exactly. And Apple was doing it 100%.
Thank you, man. Wonderful.